Hi everybody, it's Benita once again doing my live. Apparently my mic wasn't on last time. So I'm running my August forecast a little late. Been busy getting ready for my wedding to Tillman. That's happening in September, so we're pretty excited. I wanted to once again use the Publishing Goblin to do the August forecast. I just love the richness of what it creates. I always pull a card because I was one of the early adopters of the Kickstarter. I also got a special deck of cards to go with it. So I pull one for each reading. And I once again got the Gambler. So it's all about looking for joy, for pleasure. It can be self-indulgence, also to excess. So just being aware that it's a wonderful time to seek joy, affection, pleasure in your life. Just make sure that you're not doing it to the point where it's an addictive thing and causing you problems. So we've got an interesting spread this time. The die fell really close together. So I'm going to do what I did before, and I'm going to go through them one by one. And this time, for the first time that I've done this for you guys, the chaos die stayed on the mat. It didn't go bouncing off somewhere. But what's interesting is all that we see is this little blank face, and it shows up in history. So what that tells me is the role that it plays in this month is the subconscious. Anything that happened in your past that's tucked really far back, so you might react to something in a way that you're not sure why you reacted that way or why you made those choices. And it could be subconscious material that's responding to the situation that you're not aware of. If you have anything like that going on, I can help with that because I can tap into the subconscious, see what the patterns are that have been operating since early childhood, and help you work with them so that they work for you, not against you. So the actions die is the first one that we're looking at. And I'm just scanning here to see where it shows up. Ooh, it shows up in the future as a flaming sword. That sounds a little unnerving. Okay, so let's see what that means. And I haven't actually seen the flaming sword show up before. So that's kind of interesting. It's called the Burning Blade, telling you to burn it to the ground and start again. So when it shows up, it often shows who or what is wielding it. Well, in this case, it's got other die around it, but it doesn't seem like anybody's actually holding it. So with this die, it's saying throwing everything away sometimes is necessary to keep moving forward. So what it suggests is in the near future, there's going to be a situation where you're going to do it and you're going to go, oh, trash it, start again, this isn't working. So what's going to be interesting as the reading goes on is to look at what other die are falling into place with that. And so we're going to see as we go here. And the alchemist die this time is showing up under fated. It's just on the edge of future, but it's under fated, and it's iron. So I'll show you that one. That's the symbol for iron. And the way it's showing up, it's heavily influenced by the die around it. And its placement near wheel or woe, but we're not using that side of the mat. So those fields don't come up. So it speaks about human action. And so when we look at it, it's considered, it speaks as best to solidity and defense coming from a person. It can defend and attack on behalf of a person. It can be very protective. So we're going to see why that protection is showing up in relation to the other die around it. This is going to be an interesting reading because everything is tucked so close together. There's going to be a lot of influences of one die to another. And with the alley die, that one shows up. We've seen this one before, is the little dude with the top hat doing a little dance. He shows up under fated. So when you think of fated, think of it as something that's inevitable. Like no matter what is going on, this is going to play a part. And so it's about performance. And it's when it's paired with other die, which it is, it often speaks to what the performance is for or what makes it up. And it is really close to another die. So we're going to get to that one in a little bit as well. So it's about being on stage, how we perform. So if you think of it in terms of when you have to perform, when you have to do something, it's kind of obligatory, or when you feel called upon to perform, and that might be putting on a false front. So we're going to see how it relates to the other die as we go. And thanks for those who are popping in. I see you, Carrie and Kelsey. Appreciate you guys popping in and visiting. So we have the attentions die next. And with that one, it shows up under foundation and just on the edge of the past. So you see that little ring there. So it's basically a hole. So it speaks of a place, it speaks to the subconscious, what we're trying to, or we do forget. So it can speak to things we intentionally want to throw into it, or things we've forgotten. So isn't it interesting that we started off with the chaos die, and it doesn't have any of the other symbols, it just has this blank space as being in our history, saying there's something that's going to be unknown here, that's going to be an influence. And the whole sitting in our foundation and also sitting in just on the edge of the past is about something we've forgotten or we've chosen to forget. So it's going to be really interesting because it looks like August, there's going to be a real play on things under the surface influencing the current situation. And now we have the autumn die. It's sitting in the past and it looks like this. And that one is all about change. So when it talks about change, it's implying the element of transformation. What I find really interesting is it's showing up in our past. So again, it's hinting to the idea that our subconscious patterns are going to have a transformative effect right now. We may find ourselves shifting in ways we don't understand. We don't know why. We're moving in a new direction. Maybe everything's happening under the surface. There have been times when I'm doing my spiritual work where I'll sit there and I'll ask myself, what do I need to know to walk my path? What do I need to do to walk my path, the path my soul chose? And I might not get answers right away. I might just get a real churning under the surface. And sometimes even a feeling of not really having a lot of energy to put out into the world because I'm being drawn inward. And I might churn for weeks. And then all of a sudden I wake up one day and it's like I've been shot out of a cannon. There's energy, there's aim to move forward. But I can't say this is what the change is that occurred. It's just something shifted. So there's a lot of stuff happening under the surface this month. So we've done the chaos die, so I can skip past that in the book. The elements die is next. And the one we get is for the earth, and it sits under fated. So it speaks to the foundations in our world, a need to reconnect to nature. So when we think of it that way, it's saying throughout this month, whatever is coming up for you, do your best to step out into nature. It's also speaking to the fact that nature is inevitably having an effect on all of us. We're seeing extremes of temperature, extreme weather, fires, floods. So many of the scientists now are saying we're kind of hitting the point of no return. Sounds really scary, but think of it this way. Your soul chose to be here at this time. It's kind of an interesting thing when you think about it. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things to try to shift things on the planet, and that's great. And yes, we need to do that too. But think of it as your soul went, this is going to be such an interesting situation as our planet transitions. And as the people on it have to transition into living on it differently for it to continue. And don't we want to be there for that event? So that's what I sense that is. It's just about how the whole planet is changing, and it affects us. It affects us every day, and it's causing us to shift. It's making us realize we live in a temporary world. Are we working on our stuff? Or are we just drifting along and thinking that we don't have to pay attention to the growth we came here to do. So the fate die, and let me just see where I can find it. Here it is. Okay. It sits under future, and it's a hand with cards. It's called the fold. So it shows a hand throwing down the last of its card. It's giving and it's losing. It's realizing you can't win the journey or the path you're currently on. I find this very, very interesting because it is showing up right near the other dice, this one that said there's a situation where you're just going to have to trash it and go, yep, burn it and start over because this is not working. So it's very interesting those two die are showing up in the near future. So think of it as a situation. It doesn't have to be a dire thing, but more like sometimes there's wisdom in realizing when the road you're trying to go down isn't working for you, and you just need to make a fundamental shift and let go of a situation that's not working or start over and try a different tack instead of just hanging on out of pride or stubbornness and continuing trying to go down a road that's just not working for you. The Goblin die also shows up right there, and it is inspiration. So it's this cute little goblin with this little lightning strike of inspiration hitting his head. I just love these die. They're just adorable. And it says it shares exactly what it is with the dice above and below it. Spells out what we need to understand. So in this case, the sense I have with it is the dice being right next to these other ones in the near future that say, trash it, fold, let it go, it's not going to work out. It's the inspiration of learning to recognize. Oh, and Carrie says, this is actually nutty for me. Oh, that's awesome. Anybody wants to throw in comments, please feel free. I love it when you guys interact. It's awesome. So it's showing there's inspiration from that. A lot of times in my life when I have seen that something I'm doing, the doors keep closing on me, I look on that as, okay, if the doors are closing, where's the open window? Where's the other direction I'm supposed to go in? For example, there was a point earlier in my life where I thought I would go into palliative care and couldn't get into the course. All the doors were closing. Wasn't supposed to go there. Interestingly enough, in my work as a psychic coach, there are times I am with people as they take their last breath. I am with them, I'm with their families, I'm supporting them through that. So I ended up partially in that field, but it wasn't supposed to be all of my work. So there's wisdom in letting go and moving on. And happy Wednesday to you too, Jennifer. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. And I see Lisa's here too, and Shannon. Thanks, guys, for popping in. And if you're coming in late and you see this is up and you missed me, just think of it this way. Whatever really rings true for you in this August forecast is right for you. Now we're looking at the influencers die. Again, it's in the future here. Influences, not influencers. It is also with the ones that say, burn it up, start over, let it go, and be inspired to move in a new direction. It is this adorable little ghost. So let's see what the ghost is. It's about a haunting. It says it informs you something is behind something else. Your relationship is haunted by the remains of the last one, or your job offer is haunted by someone else's intentions as they have their own reasons to hire you. So it's saying ghost doesn't tell you what the ghost is, merely what it's attached to. If it pairs with a die, that generally tells you what is being haunted. Now, here's how I look at it. And again, it's really, really interesting. We've had the one die, the chaos die, showing basically the void, showing up under history, saying there's something influencing things and you can't really see what it is. We have the whole under foundation saying there's something you've forgotten about that's part of your foundation, or you chose to forget about and block on some level. And now we have the ghost saying that the thing that is influencing us to go trash it, start over, forget it, this is not working, but I'm inspired to look in a new direction. There's an underlying influence to that. What is haunting you? This is where it gets interesting. Think of it this way. What if you're trying for a job or you're going toward a relationship and you don't realize you're repeating old patterns. This underlying pattern may come up where suddenly it's erupting in front of you and you're realizing, wow, this situation really isn't working. I have to trash it, change it, forget it, and move in a new direction. So the underlying haunting may very well be something in you that says there's always been something more for you, but you've never given yourself the opportunity to look at it and to give yourself that chance to go in that new direction. It may very well be a nudging along with the little inspirational goblin to say, well, if this isn't working for me, how am I shortchanging myself? How am I not looking at where I really could be going? Am I thinking too small? Am I not willing to step out of my box of comfort that's still a prison and go in a new direction? So I really like what's happening here with these 4 future die. It might be disruptive, it might be uncomfortable, but it might also start you in a new direction for the fall, which I think is pretty cool. All right, our next die is the kindness die. And we see it's sitting here near the core, and it shows this little stitch being done. Not like that one. Stitches is a wound closing shut. At the core of a reading, it focuses the story of the reading on the wound and the healing of that wound. Isn't that interesting? Everything we've been getting in this reading has been about stuff under the surface we blocked, we aren't looking at. It's coming to the surface. It's coming to the surface to be healed. Whatever this situation is we're going to come up against in August and go, yeah, this isn't working for me. I need to change this. It's pointing us toward the healing of that old wound. I quite like that. I think that's really neat. And the next die is the longings die. And this one, remember how I said in Fated there was the little dancing dude that's all about performance? And so what's the performance about? Well, the one next to it is this guy. Looks like he's hugging the world. And it says held tight. So held tight is a need to stop all motion and simply rock in place in someone's arms. It can be read as a need for a break, as a need to relinquish control, as a need to be taken care of. I find this very interesting because when I look at these two together, hi, Michael, nice to see you too. When I look at these two together, here's the dynamic tension that I see here under Fated. All your life you've had to perform a certain way, but you're at a point where you're going, I need a break from that. I'm really, really tired of wearing that mask. I'm really tired of playing the role that I've been engineered to play by the people in my life who brought me into this world or who taught me in school, wherever your conditioning came from that made you play a smaller role than you're meant to. And you're just at a point of feeling that tension going, I want to get off that merry-go-round. I need a break from this. I need to be able to live differently. So the Fated die, it's basically saying you're coming up against that. And remember, what was also there is the Iron die, which is saying you're protected. What does that mean? It means that, for example, if you need to set new boundaries with people, you need to break the contract you've had to not set good boundaries, for example, not do what was right for you because you always put everybody else first. It's saying you're protected. Any way you stand up for yourself now and say, I'm done playing that role, I'm taking a break from this, I'm going a new direction, those people can't really hurt you anymore. Your inner child needs to know that. And in my work, I actually help you tap in, connect with your inner children, and support them through these processes so they don't feel so alone, they don't feel so scared, and they start to realize, I'm in an adult body, I have other choices now. It's okay for me to make those choices. So if you do get stuck, I can help you with those techniques. So that's where we are right now with the longings die. And the next is the majors die, right smack dab in the core. And I love this die because what I love about this whole Publishing Goblin Oracle dice set is it's inclusive. It's the binary die. So the face is binary. So it's basically saying it's an important part of life. It's two main functions as a die face. On the one hand, it speaks to the mistaken idea that things are either true or false, successful or failures. It's often requesting that you reapproach what you're doing with a broader understanding. Failure is a learning experience, and sometimes falsities have some truth in them. So when it lands in the core, it's usually saying that, you've been looking at things too narrowly. You need to see the bigger picture. You need to go broader. Boy, I love how all of this is just making so much sense and falling into place. There are these underlying patterns that you're not seeing or you don't want to see. They're going to bring things to a head in a situation where you're going to have to stop what you're doing, switch gears, or completely trash it and change in some other way. And then you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have a broader perspective. I can't play this role anymore. I need to get off this merry-go-round. What am I not seeing? While I've been sitting in the box that I was placed in, told this is who you can or can't be, this is what you can or can't have, what am I missing? What have I been missing this whole time? So we're going to get now to the Mariner's die, and that is sitting in the past as well. Interestingly enough, it's an anchor, anchored to our past. So it says that it often tells the story of where the resting period is. So again, it's suggesting respite after a long journey. The way I look at it, because it's showing up in the past, and it's thanks, Carrie. She says I have chills. I just love this set. It's amazing. Because it's showing up in the past, along with the change dice, the feeling I'm getting from it is put the past to rest. Rest yourself from cogitating over it, from beating yourself up for the things you think you did wrong or the ways you think you are wrong as a being because of whatever you were taught. It's time to drop that past belief about yourself and be willing to challenge yourself to see yourself in a different way. I'm so excited about this month. I just think it's really, really cool. The Metamorphosis die, also right in the core. And this one shows the cocoon. And it says egg. So this one's considered the egg. When it's in the core, it's time to once again read the seasons as a journey for the egg. So what's going to help the egg to grow? So if you think of this as the parts of you that have dwelt in the subconscious, that have never gotten to come to consciousness, never gotten to play, create, explore, it's like this whole month is like a death rebirth cycle. You're dropping what's not working for you anymore, and you're making space within yourself for other things to emerge that have been suppressed all this time. Hi, Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here. It's awesome when you guys pop in. And I will be posting this on replay. So when you've come in partway through and you've missed stuff, don't worry. You'll be able to watch it all. I'm using the Publishing Goblins Oracle Dice set to do August forecast. So I love that we've got this burgeoning energy. And remember, the other one that also came with the core was the binary one, saying think of things in a broader way. So whatever has been inside of you that's been dormant, that wants to come to the surface, that wants to finally be born, don't try to pigeonhole it. Don't try to stick a label on it. There may be various aspects of you that want to come to the surface. So just be willing to keep an open mind and really, really try not to judge some parts of you. For example, if you've been taught to think of anger as a negative emotion, then if a part of you comes up with anger, you might go, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. This is a bad feeling. You push it back down inside. Anger is the energy of action. It's the part of you saying, hey, there's something you need to address here. Speak up, stand up, do something about this. And when we allow anger up and we communicate it immediately, it's often just speaking in a very straightforward manner with people. This is what I need, or you can't speak to me that way. It's just clarity. It doesn't have to come out as rage. It just does because we pushed it down for so long. So whatever is coming up for you, whether it's fear, grief, anger, shame, love, lust, whatever, just allow it up without judging it. Welcome all the aspects of you. Every one of them is necessary to your journey. Okay, the obstacles die. And that one is sitting right where? Ah, there it is. It's sitting in fated as well. And it's conflict. So, hi, Lissy. Nice to see you. I'm glad you love that, Jennifer. I really appreciate you guys popping in. So with the conflict one, it draws a line in a reading. If there are dice on either side of it, prepared to hold the swords of the die, then this denotes they're at war conceptually. So what I find interesting here is it's standing between the dice that says, hey, the world is changing. It's part of the instrument of our growth that everything is changing on the planet now, and we're having to face that. Our souls chose to be here for that. On the other side of it are those 3 die that say, I don't want to perform anymore. I want to take a rest from what I'm doing, and you're protected in terms of being willing to change that rule. So the conflict might be that you don't want to get too complacent and say, so I just want to rest. You're still going to be pushed to work on your stuff, to deal with whatever is coming up inside of you that maybe you haven't wanted to look at or you didn't know was there. It's putting pressure on the pattern to go, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to let that role go. But what's my mission? What's my path? What am I supposed to be doing? In what direction am I supposed to be growing? The planet needs stewards. It needs us to be conscious while we're here. It's showing us that we haven't been conscious. So the conflict, the way I'm reading it, is it's really important to keep pressure on your patterns. Don't get lax in doing the spiritual work. I'll just see if there's anything else around that. Yeah, that's the main thing I get from it, is it's just putting pressure on the pattern to keep working on our stuff. And you may face conflict, because if you say to family, I'm not going to play that role anymore, they're not going to like it. You're breaking the unspoken contract that you had with them, that you would fulfill a certain role that would make their patterns happy. When you stop doing that, people can get pretty ornery about it. Just realize that we can be really attached to pleasing other people to the point that it takes us off our path. Part of our journey as spiritual leaders, and what I mean by that is you don't have to be leading a group of people. It's you listening to your intuition and letting it lead your life. Is if you're really listening to your intuition, chances are you're going to do things that the people around you aren't going to like because it doesn't fulfill their patterns and they're used to you acting a certain way. So you can either go, oops, my bad, I'll climb back in that little box we had me in so you're not uncomfortable. Or you can just realize they're going to be uncomfortable. They may express that vigorously. That doesn't mean you have to attach to that. You can have empathy. I can see you're struggling with the choices I'm making. I'm sorry, but this feels like the right choice for me. Yeah, black sheep, Jennifer says. Yeah, exactly. Black sheep have a lot of freedom. Nobody's expecting us to be different. You can express empathy and be supportive even of them working through their stuff, but it's their stuff. It's not your stuff, it's their stuff. Don't own it. And black sheep, I was always a maverick. I never fit in my family, and I'm kind of glad. I always did my own thing, and there's a lot of freedom in that. After a while, people just give up on trying to make you conform. Okay, the relations die comes up. It's also sitting in the future, a little ways off from some of the other die. So this one is called Together, and I will show you what it looks like. 2 little people together. We're real close. Okay. And so this one in a reading, it has to do with a we, not just a me. And the way I'm looking at that, it's showing that in this situation in the future where you're going to go, yep, trash it. This isn't going to work. Got to move on. This situation, I'm inspired to take a different move. It's going to affect other people. It might directly involve somebody, which is where conflict might come in, or support might come in. It's just saying you're not on an island with this. Other people will be affected by it. And it's just part of what's going on. We as a species are evolving, and we all affect each other. That's why it's so important to keep working on our stuff so that we are part of that evolution. Buddhist monks, when they vow to free all sentient beings, sounds like a tall order. They're just working on freeing themselves. They know we're all connected. So if they work on themselves, in the end, it helps everybody else as well. Okay, spring die. The spring die is in the present. We don't have a lot of die sitting in the present, but here we go. Hi, Anya. I love when you guys are showing up. It's so nice. In the present, we have, you see this? It's like a broken bowl. Okay. So now we're actually looking at die sitting in the present. What's going on right now? Disrepair. So with this one, it speaks to the things in your life you've let go and not given love and care to. It's time to look back on those things you've let fall away. For example, is there something you were once passionate about that you need to get back to? Is there a close friend you've allowed to become an acquaintance because you stopped investing in that relationship? It's looking at where have you let things stagnate. So this is interesting to me because it suggests that in the present, you start onto something that you let stagnate. And as you do so, as you go forward in the future, that thing may or may not work out. But if it doesn't, you'll have a sense of, okay, I need to move on now and take a different tack or do something else. But it brings this stuff forward so you will actually process it and move forward, not just let it sit there and lurk in the background as something you've been ignoring. You see my point? Okay. The suits die. Okay. The suits die also shows up in the future, and it's another little sword. So we got, it's like these guys are kind of duking it out. We got swords going on here. We got swords happening in the Fated. There's a lot of sword action going on here. So this one comes up in the future, and it's called swords. It's often when you're in a battle carrying two or more thoughts and you're doing your best to determine which of them will come out alive. So it's the conflicted thinking here. And this is where we come back to what the future shows is dealing with a situation where you're going to say, trash it, forget it, not working, got to start over, got to do this differently. You're inspired to go in a new direction, but there's likely to be conflict because when we go, well, I'm going to go in that direction, any patterns of ours, any of our core patterns that like to keep everything the same, the ego will freak out. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's going to change everything. Don't go there. That's what death rebirth feels like. The ego goes, I don't want you to have this new experience or go in this new direction because I'll die. The ego doesn't realize that when it dies, in other words, we let our old rule drop away, that it's reborn into the next phase, the next role we adopt. And if you've done death rebirth enough times, you'll start into that tunnel and you know, even if you can't see it, even if you're stepping into darkness, there is eventually going to be light on the other side of that tunnel. It's just, you got to go in there and do the work to get out the other side. So it's an interesting thing to see because it's saying, here's all the stuff that's going to happen. And there's going to be this conflict, and there's going to be stuff you have to let drop away and move in a new direction. But you're also going to face that inner resistance, which is good. Because if you can turn and work with that resistance and help it to become conscious, it will eventually lend its energy to your new thing that you're doing, your new approach to life. And if you don't know how to do that, that's where I come in. I can help you with that. Okay, the summer die. The summer die is also showing up in the present. And we've got a little sun. And this one is called radiance. So it often speaks to the other die approaching it or being led by it. It can relate to someone leading problems to their own doorstep by accident. So it's excessive, it's dense, it's radiating waves. It speaks to radiance, popularity, glory, and its downfall. So this speaks in the present when we look at the fact that there's that broken bowl too. It could be something where maybe you've stepped on somebody's toes. Maybe you've made somebody unhappy. You thought everything was going great. You thought you guys were getting along. All of a sudden there's conflict and you don't know where it came from because, again, subconscious patterns at work. And it could be their subconscious patterns getting triggered where you don't know why they're reacting the way when you just said something simple and innocuous and not harmful in your mind, but they had a big reaction, or you're having a big reaction and you don't know why. But it's just bringing things to the head and to the point where there's some kind of conflict that then leads into that future situation. So we can see how everything's leading into everything else, which is kind of interesting. I love the way these die just flow so effortlessly. So the winter die, and that's this one. We've got a little eye there with a tear in it. It's also in the present. And it is the sorrow one. So it's basically that you're going through something difficult. You may feel sad about it. And again, sorrow is a good thing. It's bringing emotion to the surface so you can see it and work with it. So it shows there's some under the surface churning going on this month that starts to come to a head in the present, but going forward really opens something up, so you have to face it and work with it. And there's one other die called the wounds die, and it shows up also right in the core. We got this little fellow here who's bent over, not looking like he's feeling too good. Gutted is the word for this one. It speaks to feeling like you've gone through some kind of betrayal, you've been blindsided, there's a surprise you're not enjoying. So it's interesting because that dice is paired with the binary and the egg. So it's saying this situation that's going to throw you for a loop in August is going to broaden your perspective and bring to the surface a part of you that's been waiting to be born. And we all know birth is messy. So there's a death rebirth experience happening this month. Move with it. If you need support going through it, or you need support to deal with it effectively, not only do I tune into your subconscious, I'm really good at giving strategies. So if you say, I'm having this problem at work or this problem in my family or what have you, I can give you strategies to help you work skillfully with the people in your life so that you're working on your patterns. You're not just pushing things off to another day. You're actually doing the work so that as you shift, how you interact with people changes and how they respond to you is going to shift as well. So that's August. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to try and find some time in the next little while to do some mini readings. But in the meantime, if you want to go deep, go right down the well and get deep into what's happening in your subconscious that's trying to surface and needs a little boost, I'd be happy to work with you. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great evening. Bye for now.